Sonic! Ironically, you've always been playing catch up to Mario, whether it's your platformers, RPGs, party games, sports titles, educational games, or even your racing games. And unfortunately, typically these games will end up falling short when compared to the plumbers. But unlike Mario, your games are willing to mix up the formula more, and take some more risks to change things to see how they end up. Even if you sometimes try to do this right after the game was successful anyway, such as the previous title to the one we're looking at today. So how does this hold up as the second title in Sega's third attempt to give Sonic a racing franchise? Well, let's find out as we look at Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed 1 year on. To quickly give you guys a little bit more context, I don't own, nor have I ever owned, the previous title in this series, but I have played all of the courses on it and I enjoyed the time I had with it. And whilst there are a lot of comparisons to be made between it and Mario Kart, I found it to be a really solid kart racer in its own right that provided a lot of Sega fan service with its unlockable songs, characters, and nods to things that were abandoned long ago. So what's changed between that game and this one? Besides Sega milking Sonic's name even more for the title with this one? Well, quite a bit to be perfectly honest. Let's start off with the core racing mechanics. Similar to the last game, and pretty much every other mascot racer ever, you're doing 3 laps around tracks based off of levels from the character's past games. Your car can drift when you get to corners to allow you to go around them better, and doing so for long enough will net you some boost for when you release the drift button. There's also ramps that you can do tricks off of to get yourself more boost, and there's also some item boxes dotted around the track that you can drive through to get yourself some items that will either help you or hinder your opponents. The main addition to the gameplay is that in a majority of the courses your character will encounter different environments, and after passing through a blue ring the vehicle will transform into a vehicle that can better handle the environment, be it a car, a boat or a plane, and carry on the race in this new form. A majority of the time these rings are mandatory to your race to pass through at a specific point, but on a few courses you can also find rings earlier than anticipated by taking certain routes and transform your vehicles earlier to take advantage of them. Your cars are your standard vehicles and generally control pretty well, have a nice feel of speed to them and all that. The boats suck. They're a lot more slippery than the cars and feel a lot lighter too, making them much more difficult to control, and I swear they're a bit slower as well. And finally, the planes. Best vehicle in the game hands down. Planes are the fastest vehicle and allow you to go pretty much anywhere in the air that you want, within reason. They control really well and you can even quickly dodge roll left and right in the air. And if the level starts in the air you get a rolling star. It's just kinda disappointing that you can only use them in less than half of the levels in the game. Another minor disappointment in this game is the item selection really. As I mentioned earlier, there's items in this game like pretty much any other mascot kart racer. There's your standard selection of things with your speed boost, your homing weapon, your straight throw and hopefully hit weapons, and the screw the guy in first place weapon among other things. But what do all these weapons have in common? None of them are related to any Sega franchises whatsoever. I mean, come on guys, in the last game you at least had the speed shoes from Sonic to represent the speed boost. Hell, when Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games has more Sega items in their racing minigame, you know you've gone wrong somewhere. The bigger disappointment comes in the form of a returning item from the last game, the All-Star, a powerful item that is supposed to help out struggling players get back into the race. And I say supposed to as, whilst I do an effective job at doing this, I've received them when I've been as far ahead as 3rd place in some races, when they really should have only been given to those that are in the lower half of the pack really. Anyway, these items have also received a bit of a downgrade since the previous game, as they used to be these cool, unique sort of moves that were specific to each character, such as Sonic turning supersonic and boosting throughout the level, Amigo using his maracas to force all the other cars behind him and getting a conga line, and II summoning Super Monkey Ball characters to attack his opponents for him around the course. But now every character's all-star move is the same. Everyone turns their vehicle into plane mode, they have temporary invincibility, and they have some form of attack that they can spam. How thrilling. What sucks even more about this is that the plane from the All-Star move can't even take off from the course, it's just stuck to the land or water as it basically just functions like a speed boost due to it being a faster vehicle. I mean, geesh, what a downgrade for a really cool, unique item. So, let's go on with the levels that we're actually racing on. As you might expect, there's a lot of courses that are based on various Sonic levels, but other series do get the chance to shine too, with levels based on Samba de Amigo, Shinobi, Jet Set Radio, Panzer Dragoon, and Golden Axe to name a few, so you do get a good bit of variety in there at least. The levels themselves overall are all pretty good really. Plenty of them branch out into multiple different pathways, meaning you have to play them multiple times and explore if you want to find the ideal route through them all, especially if you're trying to find good places to chain boosts together. A lot of levels also have unique set pieces to them that help them stand out from each other really, like the giant spiders in Graveyard Gig, the boss cameos in the Knights level, and the light bridges that extend before your car in Galactic Parade. What's more is a lot of these levels will actually change up between laps to keep things fresh, such as the Panzer Dragoon level getting more and more destroyed with each lap, requiring you to traverse the level in boats and then in planes. Or even just the aesthetic changing of the leaves in seasonal shrines. It's a nice change of pace and they can make you have to change up your tactics between laps. Transformed has 5 cups which each contain 4 tracks and has one course that could be purchased as DLC, or if you got the special edition, like I did, the level was already bundled in and this brings our total tracks to 21. As a side note, I'm really not sure if there's actually a standard edition for the Wii U as I've never actually seen one. But anyway, 21 tracks. Not bad really. Now, how many did the previous one have again? Wait, what? You downsized with this game? But why? I mean, the last game was a success. I would have thought you'd at least match it with this game. Like, jeez. Hang on a second, one of these cups, the classic cup, it's just 4 levels ripped right out of the last game. And I mean ripped, and most of these levels just got tiny graphical touches like here and there, and that was pretty much it. They couldn't just update them a little bit with a boat or a plane section somewhere. I mean, places like this would be perfect for them. And then out of the 17 levels made for the game, another 3 are pretty much redone versions of levels from the previous game. Just had to squeeze another level out of those assets, did you guys? Really? Hell, with Sonic's platformers alone you can make a game without having to repeat yourself. And yet somehow here we are with our 4th fucking level on Seaside Hill. Christ, what happened here? What I said about the level quality still stands, yes, but a third of these levels are what we've already seen, and it was just one game earlier. Anyway, because I have no idea how to segue into this, let's talk about character selection for this game. The character roster for the game has a pretty decent selection from across the Sega universe. From the Sonic series we've got Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Shadow, Dr. Eggman and Metal Sonic. We've got Ai and Mimi from Super Monkey Ball, Alex Kidd from Sega's first attempt to dethrone Mario, Amigo from Samba de Amigo, Beady Joe from Crazy Taxi, Beat and Gum from Jet Set Radio, Gilius from Golden Axe, Joe Musashi from Shinobi, Knights and Riala from Knights, Ulala and Pudding from Space Channel 5, Vice from Panzer Dragoon, and you can even play as the announcer. Me! There's also a brand new character that Sega created just for this game called Ages, who is actually a Dreamcast virtual memory unit that drives a car from Daytona, USA, becomes a plane from Afterburner in the air, and is a Dreamcast controller in the water. I really enjoy Ages, I think it's a really cool idea for a character. And then there's also 2 more characters. Everyone's favourite Sega character, Danica Patrick! Wait, sorry, who's this? Some real life race car driver? Okay. And of course, everyone's other favourite Sega character, Wreck-It Ralph. I guess he's just here because Sonic made a cameo in his movie, so he decided to show up here. But I can't help but feel they've made the wrong choice here. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't hate his inclusion or anything, but I don't see why they chose him in particular. I mean, surely someone from that film might be better qualified. Someone who's actually from a racing game, maybe. Someone who could easily bring another track to the game. Nah. But to have another little rant here, what the hell happened to some of the characters from the last game? Characters like the Bonanza Brothers, the Choo Choos, the Virtual Fighters. They've all just completely disappeared into the ether. What the hell happened to Billy Hatcher? He was one of your most recognisable characters. He's been reduced to playable character to just standing there on his own track. I mean, people were mad when Knights was just on flag duty in the last... Hey, wait. Last game, Knights was on flag duty, Rystar was a stage cameo, and Billy Hatcher was playable. Now, Rystar waves the flag, Billy gets a stage cameo, and Knights is the playable character? Well, what's the deal here? Is the universe going to implode or something if these three are all racing alongside each other? I mean, you could have just had a character nobody cares about doing the flags like Omochawa, but instead you decide to piss off a different section of the Sega fanbase with every game. And why did you decide the best action for some of the newcomers was just to double up the series representatives? I mean, you could have brought back the characters I mentioned, or added characters from other Sega games like Phantasy Star or Altered Beast, or if you really wanted, Sega Bass Fishing to expand the series that are covered by this game. Anyway, each character has their own set of stats that give them a rating between 1 and 6 in speed, acceleration, handling, boost, and all-star. Though that last stat is completely arbitrary really. And when choosing a character, you can select a vehicle mod that will change stats accordingly. For example, an acceleration mod will up 2 points in acceleration, but it will take away those points from other stats. Or the balance mod will increase and decrease the stats to bring your vehicle closer to being an all-rounder. These mods are unlocked for each racer after you've raced with them enough times to gain experience with them and level up, earning a new mod each time until level 6. There's also console mods that you can unlock that can change the stats of a car dramatically, but with seemingly no exact rhyme or reason. And when you unlock a console mod, it can be used by everyone that debuted on that console. For example, the Saturn mod can be used by Knights and Riala, and the Dreamcast mod can be used by Shadow and Vice. So how do you unlock the characters and console mods? By playing the single player career mode. The career mode is similar to mission mode in the last game, where you get given different tasks that you can accomplish and make progress once you've beaten them. However, in this game, rather than just simply given a list, you're given what's basically a world map that has each mission on it, and beating them lets you travel further into the map, until you reach the end and travel to the next world, with there being 6 worlds in total. So how exactly are the characters and mods unlocked in this mode? Well, before you start each mission, you have the option of selecting your difficulty: easy, medium, hard and expert, and you're awarded stars based on your choice, 1 for easy, 2 for medium and so on. As you travel through the maps, you'll find places where characters and console mods are locked and require a certain amount of stars to unlock them. It starts off easy enough, with Amigo being only 8 stars, Danica Patrick's only 16, Vice only needs 30, but it soon ramps up. You've got Knights who needs 80 stars, Gilius who needs 120, and Aegis at most with 165. There's 10 different kinds of events that get used across the career mode, all of which get repeated and used across the multiple worlds. But just to give you a quick overview, first there are races, which are just your standard race against 9 opponents and you need to come first to win. Basic, but it works. Drift challenges are a sort of time attack mode where you have a short period of time to drive through a certain amount of checkpoint gates, and between those gates are areas of road you have to drift through. Stay in the area long enough and you get a time bonus added to the clock when you reach the end. And these are essential if you want to finish. They can be a bit tricky, but they are pretty useful for learning how to practice your drifts and stuff, so not bad. Versus races are a short series of one-on-one races that are conducted all on the same track. If you head when the time runs out, or you get really far ahead of your opponent, you win, and move on to the next opponent. They're like the standard race in that they're basic but they work, but I also prefer them over the regular races. They're over pretty quickly. Boost challenges are very similar to drift challenges. You get a short period of time to make it through a certain amount of checkpoints, but instead of boosting through checkpoints, adding time to your clock, boosting will freeze the timer for the duration of the boost. This event's kind of redundant as it basically results in you doing the same thing as in the drift challenges. Drifting as efficiently as possible, but this time also releasing at the right moment so you can freeze time, then immediately start drifting again. Although out of the two, I do prefer boost challenges over drift challenges. Traffic attack. So for this mode you have to drive through waves of traffic and pass between 2 cars at the end that have a beam of light going between them before the time runs out, and then your timer can increase. This game mode is so infuriating though. The cars will always swerve into your path that you're trying to take, or hit you right as you're drifting or boosting, and on high difficulties you might as well hit reset as soon as that happens because you are not recovering from it. On top of that, the rules for this game type change between each iteration, and this is the only game type to do that. Sometimes you have to face the traffic completely unarmed, sometimes you get a shield, sometimes you get rockets, but all the times it's inconsistent, annoying, and the AI can be amazingly brutal, especially when introducing the later car types. Ring races.
Then there's no time to waste.
Guess what? It's another get through X amount of things before the time runs out. And it's literally Superman 64. Granted, it's got much better control this time, but it's just flying through rings within a time limit. You've seen this in practically every other game that has flight. I will say though that one good thing to come out of Ring Race is that it lets you take a path through the stage that you're not normally allowed to take, and so you get to explore new areas with it, and that's pretty great as you get to see parts you might not have seen before. But I have to ask, come on, you have an event called Ring Race in a Sonic racing game, and you don't decide to use Sonic's rings for the graphics? Big missed opportunity there, guys. Battle races are actually a whole lot of fun. It's you and 4 opponents doing a 3-lap race, but you also have a life meter. If anyone is hit by items 3 times during the race, they are eliminated and removed from the race. If you're the last person standing, you will instantly win. So it basically becomes both a race to the finish line and a challenge to knock out your opponents whilst also dodging their attacks. It's hectic, but it's a hell of a lot of fun, and you will practically always win via knockout if you're skilled with it. And Dr. Eggman seems to really enjoy it. Sprint is basically time attack mode against a ghost. You have 3 attempts to beat them in a lap time, and that's it. Kinda boring really. And we also have Boost Race, which is a standard race, but the only items you can get are boosts, and I believe the course has been changed a little bit to include more boost pads. Despite all the boosting going on though, it's kind of bland really. And finally we have Pursuit. Pursuit is probably the most unique one here, and it sucks. Pursuit involves you chasing a tank and firing rockets at it as you go around the track. Both you and the tank are trying to lower each other's health meter, which can be replenished with hearts that you can find. And the tank's attack pattern changes up when it loses a certain amount of health. So why do I hate it? The tank's attacks will almost always clog up while you're trying to drive, which needs you to fire a rocket at them to hit the attack. But the attacks are pretty much non-stop, especially in the later portions of the fight, requiring to use up more of your ammo. And then when you finally reach the thing, you can only take 1 or 2 shots before your ammo runs out, and then it spawns more of its own attacks and you get hit, starting the cycle over again. Also, on the higher difficulties, it has a much higher health and it can take forever. And then there's the worst thing about it. The game doesn't tell you this, but Pursuit has a time limit. You can be so close to finally blowing up this guy, then right out of nowhere, failed! You've been trying to fight this guy for a few minutes? Well now, fuck you, try again. So now let me share a story with you of me and the career mode. When I first got this game, I decided I wanted to unlock pretty much everything as soon as possible so that my friends and I could use this as a substitute until Mario Kart 8 came out. The quickest way to achieve this was to do every event on the highest difficulty to get more stars. And when you boot up the game for the first time, the highest difficulty is hard. And just quickly, one thing I haven't really touched on yet is that the AI on difficulties above medium can be balls bustingly difficult. And beating them is usually a combination of skill, patience, and more often than not, luck. Anyway, I pressed on through it all though, partly due to my completionist streak in me, and partly because of my own deep-seated hatred for myself. And so, after weeks of torment, I finally made it to the final world, and was basically greeted with this. The expert difficulty was unlocked, and if I wanted to get all the mods for all the characters, I'd need to go back and beat all the previous world events all over again, and on an even higher difficulty. At this point I was done. Utterly, completely done with this mode. I scraped just over enough stars in the final few events, unlocked ages, and then left this mode, and all the still locked console mods behind me. And the only time I've been back since was to record the footage for this review. and I'm happy to declare the AI is indeed still bullshit. But seriously, this kind of idea sucked back then, and it sucks now. And the worst thing is that with the exception of 2 characters, this is the only way to unlock everything in the game. So if you want to get anything other than the basic cast of characters you start with, you've got to do this mode. I don't get why they made it this way. They could have just tweaked the old unlock system from the previous game and it would have been just fine. The old system had players earning these Sega Miles things after each race depending on how well they did, which was similar to how this game used an experience system. And when the players had earned enough, they could go to the in-game shop and buy whatever characters and musics and stages that they wanted, and in whatever order they wanted. I mean, that would be so much more satisfying to do it in that way. Unlock what we want when we want it, rather than having to put up with so many boring or just flat out bad events, when all we really want to be doing is just racing with these characters that we like. And in that little tirade there, you might have heard me mention purchasable songs. That's because in the last game you could buy songs from various Sega games, and when entering a race, if you own multiple songs for the next track you're going to be racing on, you can choose whatever song you wanted to be played. Hell, you could even have access to a couple of songs from Sonic R. And even though the songs were pretty much directly ripped straight out of their original games, it was nice to hear the songs brought back and that the game sort of paid homage to them in this way. With Racing Transformed, there are no additional songs in this game. There is 1 song for every level. However, all these songs are brand new mixes made for this game, and are all derived from at least 1 song, and a lot of times multiple songs, from Sega's past, and to be honest, I really actually do dig the soundtrack to this game. It's constantly pretty upbeat and energetic, and like I said about the additional tracks from the last game, this feels like a great homage to tracks in the past. I just wish we could have had the best of both worlds and, you know, have like purchasable tracks that were ripped, just so we had the option of playing them alongside these remixes on level. So I've put this off until this point in the review now because there's a fair bit I want to say here, and we had a lot of ground to cover coming up to this point. So let's conclude with the gameplay experience of Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. Let's start out with the positives of the experience. The game's soundtrack, as I said, is pretty great and always fits the tone of the levels that you're in. It gets you pumped for the experience, as well as being the main area of the game where I think long-time Sega fans will find the most loving experience out of the game, due to the wide pool of music the soundtrack takes its inspiration from. The graphics are, on the whole, actually very pretty to look at in this game, and create some pretty nice environments to race through. Although I did find that some levels would have occasional pop-in issues, and I recall one time in the past, before recording footage for this interview, the game just gave up on loading water textures for me one time in one level, and so my character ended up just taking a lovely cruise in their boat above a void. But graphical hiccups are few and far between, to be honest. And we'd also like to say once again that the levels are well designed in terms of structure and how a lot of them change as the race goes on to keep things fresh. It's just disappointing how much of these levels is rehashed from past work, especially considering it was just one game ago. And so, on to the bad stuff in this experience. This game can be an absolute nightmare to play at times, and I'm not just talking about the career mode. There's been points where the game's physics engine has just given up on me completely, and crashing into a wall apparently flings me up vertically, and I really can't find an explanation for that. There's been times, like in any kart racer, where my kart needed to be reset because of occurrences such as, falling down pits, going too far off course, and stuff like that. And I get that. Every kart game does that. But Transform can get incredibly overzealous with that reset. In moments where I swear I could save my vehicle from whatever is about to happen to me, the game just steps in, picks me up, and plonks me back down a few meters behind where I was. Like, gee, thanks, game. And look at this right here. Thanks for saving me, game. I guess I wasn't supposed to jump to this bridge. Where am I supposed to go? Oh, this bridge? Great! And I mean, this happens so many times, and it can really kill a good race because the game panics for no good reason and just drags you back. And do you want to know another thing this game does that can kill a good race? Deny you speed boosts. As I mentioned earlier, there's a trick system in this game. How it works is you pull off flips and rolls in the air, and when landing you will get a speed boost relative to the amount of flips or rolls that you've just performed. But I swear, about a quarter to a third of the time, whenever I land my tricks perfectly, the game just decides, yeah, screw you. For no damn reason really. And sometimes my characters even act like they've failed the jump before they've even hit the ground, and why? You wanna know what else sucks about the gameplay? The AI. On easy and normal, they're pretty tame, but as soon as you take it up to hard, these guys are out for blood and will stop at nothing, not to make sure that they win, but to make sure that you lose. I'm serious here, you need to bring your A game. And you might be sat there now thinking, you're pretty good, and I just suck and you can win easily. But let me just tell you something, the AI cheats. And I don't just mean in a rubber banding sense like a lot of racing games do, although that is actually a pretty big problem. I mean it actually cheats. Look at this race here. The path splits into two, an upper section and a lower section. Taking the upper section has a couple more boosts, but at the end you have to dodge enemies on the tracks, whereas the lower section doesn't have the enemies, so an ideal solution would be to go along the top section until just before the enemies appear and join the lower track. So I'm trying to think of a way of how to do that, and then Ulala comes past me, and you can see that once she leaves the platform she turns off to the left, and you can see via the minimap she's joined the lower path on the left. So I'm thinking, okay, next lap, maybe I should try that. And let's have a look at what happens when I do that. That, my friend, is pure bullshit. And then there's one more gameplay aspect that I've not mentioned yet. Tokens and the slot machine. Throughout the races you will find gold tokens lying around on the tracks. If you pick up 5 of them you get a spin on the slot machine where you can win a prize. The prize can be a stat buff to your vehicle, starting off the race with an item, getting a free item on every lap, or just straight up lying to you. I'm not kidding. Look what happens to Knights here straight after getting their upgrade. Yeah, that's exactly as described, isn't it? And another issue with this machine is, considering it gobbles up 5 tokens at a time, look how long it takes for the machine to actually win. I mean, look at this is how many tokens I'm burning through over the course of a single Grand Prix with the aim of just winning one time before each race. I mean, Jesus! So one of the main benefits of having a Wii U is that you can play a large majority of the games on just the gamepad. This is generally intended to free up the TV, but to be perfectly honest, I mostly just use it so I can be completely lazy and play video games perfectly fine from my bed. And yes, this game does support gamepad only mode, only nothing in the game will actually tell you how to activate it. Nothing in the enclosed instruction book tells me how to do it, and none of the buttons do it. I discovered this completely by accident when wiping something off the screen. And it turns out, wiping down on the touchscreen of the gamepad drags down whatever is on the TV off it down onto the gamepad. To make this clear, to my knowledge, this is the only game to do this for gamepad functionality. Most of the games just have you either press a button on the gamepad to swap screens over or press the minus button on the gamepad. So I would have thought with such a bizarre design choice you'd think they'd tell you about it rather than just, mid-race you could accidentally swap screens because your thumb slipped. And it doesn't even pause the game when you switch, so I hope you know what you're doing because otherwise you're instantly out of the race. And all these things combined with some of the earlier complaints I've made just make it kind of a terrible experience for me to play. And when I'm recording footage for a game, especially something that's supposed to be as happy and upbeat as this one, it really shouldn't have felt like a chore to me, but it did, and I would sometimes feel exhausted with it, even after just playing an hour's game session. To be perfectly honest, I feel like this game is missing out on a lot of charm from the previous one, and that really hurts it in the long run. And I just don't find it as enjoyable as that one. And when my friends and I finally did actually get around to playing this game on multiplayer, there was a general consensus that we were all pretty underwhelmed by it, to be honest, and it was basically just an inferior Mario Kart. And it's not just an inferior Mario Kart, it's an inferior Sonic racing game. There's just so many changes to the formula that this game makes that the last one set up, and a lot of them don't really work out well for it. In conclusion, this is the first game I really can't recommend. If you're looking for a good Sega racing game, go to the previous title. If you're looking for the best of kart races, well, I think we generally know the answer to that. But I guess if you're absolutely desperate to get this next Sonic fix, I recommend to you that you get the Steam version of the game. There's more characters in it, and there's more DLC if you want the option to get even more characters on top of that. And from what I hear, the online community is much better than this one's. So where do I go from here? Well, I guess since a third-party children's game didn't work out well, maybe a third-party adults game. So join me as we look at Zombie U 1 year on.